Hey, everybody, welcome back to another episode. I've got a special treat for you today. I'm sitting down and chatting with Irene Fehr, who is a sex and intimacy coach. All right, so we're talking about all the juicy stuff. Irene helps couples make love and sex work in a long term relationship and bring sex and passion into a sexless one. Determined to dispel myths about why sex dies in long term monogamous relationships that cause heartache and broken dreams, Irene's view on women's libido and intimacy have been featured all around the world in HuffPost, Cosmopolitan, Shape, Refinery 29, Scary Mommy, Elite Daily, and Bustle. She is no stranger to her clients' issues, having recovered from the all too common story of happy marriage turned sexless when she lost her libido, all before turning 30. Welcome, Irene.
Thank you so much for having me.
Yeah, I'm really excited. This is the first time I've done an episode on sex and intimacy. So I know my listeners are going to be wanting to tune in for this because I think we can all, as women, relate on some level to what we're about to talk about. I'd love to start with your story. You mentioned what happened to you before 30. Like, that sounds super interesting. Like, tell me a little bit about, your journey here.
Yeah. So my journey is so common and happens to so many couples, so many women around the world. Yet when I was going through it, I thought I was alone. I thought I was broken. I thought there was something absolutely wrong with me. And the story is that our relationship was beautiful in the beginning. There was magic, there was passion, there was connection, and sex was great. I couldn't get enough of. And I was ravenous and enjoying myself. And my the guy, well, the man who became my husband later was my first actually sexual partner. And I
Mm.
thought, this is amazing. I love
Right,
this.
right.
And we progressed in our relationship, and very quickly I started to lose interest in sex.
Mm.
And at first it was loss of lubrication, which I was assured was absolutely normal and typical, and there's lube for that. So
Mhm.
I followed that commonplace advice. But then I started to experience pain during intercourse, and then very quickly lost interest in sex
Mm.
completely. Didn't want to be touched, didn't want to connect, didn't want to go there. And it actually got worse where I was basically avoiding any situations where there would be anything that could be misconstrued as a signal that I want sex, because I
Right.
knew I wasn't interested in, I couldn't deliver and all that.
Mm.
So it was avoiding those situations, but also bristling if I was touched in a way by my husband that would somehow lead me to think that something is expected of me.
Right.
And during this whole time, again, like I've said in the beginning, I thought I was alone. I thought I was the only one. I thought I was broken somehow sexually.
Mhm.
And I took it upon myself to try to fix the problem, fix myself, to go back to the way I'm supposed to be, to go back to what we had like right in the beginning.
Yeah.
And it was actually that mentality itself that dug us deeper into the problem.
Mm.
Because what I learned later, when I started doing my own work around my sexuality, trying to quote unquote fix the problem, um, I realized that nothing was broken, but actually what was missing was the communication, which was one of the nutrients that I needed to
Mm.
actually build arousal, build um, interest in sex.
Mhm.
And we could not broach difficult topics, and which is why our relationship ultimately ended. Um, but again, it was that mentality that it's my problem and I somehow have to fix it in secret, was one of the reasons why we couldn't fix it,
Right.
because women's libido in a long-term relationship, as I later found out, as I now absolutely see in my couples practice, is a couples issue,
Mhm.
because not only does it take two people to have sex, but it also is about the relationship, the relating that the two people are doing or
Right.
not doing.
Mhm.
that is affecting women's sexual desire. That unlike men, for women, that relating is an essential nutrient. And once it's gone, or maybe it's not there to begin with, then it really affects genuine sexual desire, not
Mm.
just having sex to get off because you kind of have the sexual tension built up, or obligatory sex or performance sex, but that genuine sexual desire is really dependent on the relating,
Mm.
and it's not a woman's problem to fix, it's the couple's problem to fix.
Yes, thank you for saying that. Because, I think so many of us can hear ourselves in your story. I certainly can. In my first marriage, same thing, got married very young and thought the sex was great, but started to lose interest. And then the problem became, why is my libido so low compared to his? And going to therapy for that, because I was the problem and felt like I had to fix that problem. And, I love how you called communication a nutrient. And really, I think that for so many of us, we are being told we're the problem. And when you use the word nutrient, it makes me think of like, how do you create fertile soil for something to grow? But why are so many women still in this place of thinking they're the problem? Like, can you unpackage that as far as like why you think that happens to so many women?
Yeah. And one of the biggest reasons, if not really the main reason, is that women's sexual desire is different than men's. That the mechanism by which most women come to desiring the act of sex with their partner, again, is run by a completely different mechanism. And the two mechanisms, and of course, I'm really generalizing because
Mhm.
certainly, um, with there's certain men that experience things the way women do, and vice versa, and then there's other genders. But this is a generalization that covers at least 80% of each gender. And most men experience what's called spontaneous sexual desire. And the spontaneity comes from the almost instantaneous cause and effect of thinking about sex, or seeing their naked partner,
Right.
or even just like seeing a billboard with
Right.
a naked woman, and being able to be aroused to have sex all within a couple of minutes.
Mhm.
Arousal for men, the availability for penetration and actually readiness to orgasm can take anything from like 20 seconds to 2 minutes.
Right.
No stimulation required. It's just that thought. I
Mhm.
want sex. I'd like to have sex. Ooh, she's available for sex. And they can get turned on and be ready.
Mhm.
So again, there's that spontaneous link there. Whereas what most women experience is what's called responsive sexual desire, or contextual sexual desire. And what that means is that women are responding to things around them. So if you're a woman who is, for example, who has young children and a job, and your day is filled with responsibilities for the children, the job, whatever else, that's what you're responding to. And sexual desire can't really come out of that. There's
Mm.
nothing to spark the desire. Whereas when you are faced with sexy contexts, such as intimate communication with your partner, feeling desired, playfulness, relaxation, touch that relaxes you, touch that stimulates you, then you can actually start to respond to that.
Mhm.
And out of that response, out of that stimulation, again, mental, emotional, energetic, the desire starts to come out. Like,
Mm.
oh, it feels really good. We're playing with each other. We're relaxed. My partner is desiring me. Like, ooh, now something is starting to arise in me. Ooh, now I
Mhm.
want more.
Right.
Ooh, now I can entertain the idea of sex.
Right.
So there's this buildup. And so what happens is that um, all of the things I just said naturally happen in the beginning of a relationship.
Mm.
You are flirting with
Yeah,
each other. You are
right.
texting each other. You are spending evenings on the phone, dreaming about things, sharing your feelings and dreams. You are, you go to the movies, and what do? You make out. You don't care
Yeah.
about the
You're
movie.
going on dates, to being romantic.
Exactly. You are at the forefront of your partner's attention, and that's an aphrodisiac.
Mm-hmm.
And that's what the woman is responding to. And it looks like she has spontaneous sexual desire. She wants to have sex all the time.
Right.
It's exactly what happened to me. I loved that attention. I was thriving with that. And we spent hours in bed, just exploring, talking, relaxing. And so that was awesome.
Mm.
Then fast forward in a relationship where you see each other in passing. And as you see each other in passing, you are talking about logistics, like who's picking up the kids when, and who's taking out the garbage. Oh no, like, no, that's not how it is. This is how it is. So you're arguing and all of that. And you crawl into bed exhausted at the end of the night. His spontaneous libido is the same.
Right.
He just has to think about sex.
Right.
His purse is responding to all of that and none of the connection, play, relaxation,
Wow.
attention, all of that.
Wow.
And so this is where we as a society are responsible for this, because we have, since Freud's time, equated male sexuality with the way sexuality is supposed to be.
Mm-hmm.
So this spontaneous picture of sexuality is the sexuality that we're all aiming for.
Yeah.
And we have ignored, or worse, wrote off women's sexuality as lesser than. See, she's not capable of that spontaneous, basically
Yeah.
combustion.
Right.
Right? She needs time, and it's slow, and it's unpredictable, and all of that. And so we then judge ourselves against that. Women judge ourselves against that. And then also men
Mm-hmm.
look at themselves and look at her, and look at, again, movies and media, and like, wait, it's supposed to
Mm-hmm.
be spontaneous.
Mm-hmm.
There's something wrong with her.
Mm-hmm.
And there's
Wow.
nothing wrong with her.
Wow. Yeah, that makes so much sense. And it also kind of feels like a cosmic joke. like, like
Exactly.
it's a setup.
Yeah.
you know?
Well, and too, in our modern society that's so focused on productivity and production and efficiency, women's libido in a way got crowded out, because
Mm-hmm.
it takes time, it's unpredictable, it requires investment, emotional, energetic, not just right the motions, but
Mm-hmm.
an actual investment. And it's not productive, and it's not effective. And so much of the time I hear women come and tell me, my partner climaxes and orgasms in 3 minutes. It takes me 45 minutes. I need to learn how to climax in 3 minutes.
Yeah.
And we actually, well, as women, and we as a society, lose out when we actually take this beautiful process, akin to a flower opening up,
Yeah.
and then try to basically rip the petals to make sure that we get her done by 3 minutes.
Right.
Right.
Yeah. I think like what I hear so often from my clients and also my own experience is that frustration around, okay, so at the beginning we have all of this time and it's so great and there's lots of pleasure. And yeah, life starts to happen. You have children, you have jobs, you have obligations, you have responsibilities. And so life becomes so crowded and busy. And then there's no energy at the end of the day. Like you said, okay, so the guy can be turned on in 20 seconds, but the woman needs more time. And then it starts to feel like, how could we ever find the time? If it takes me 45 minutes, where are we going to find 45 minutes? Because by the time the kids are in bed, I'm exhausted. So it does feel frustrating for so many women to be in that place where it's like, there is no time for this. There is no space or energy for this. So yeah, I've got to either figure out how to get there faster, or we don't have sex. And then we have a sexless marriage.
Yeah. And that's why the answer to this is what I do with all my couples. And we look at this holistically. We look at their entire lives and where their energy is going and what they're doing to create systemic change, because women's libido, to bring its gifts, to bring its nutritiousness, both for women and for their partners, we need to make space for that. And so it has to be a systemic approach and a holistic approach, to create a lifestyle that supports that, to
Mm-hmm.
have that time, to have that spaciousness, to have uh, the 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 connection, the level of connection, not just this passing by
Yeah.
connection, but true deep connection that feeds women. And when women are fed with that, and they're fed by the sex they're having, because they're having it aroused, they're
Mm-hmm.
having it ready, they're having it when their mind has turned off and they're not in their emails or the to-do list, but truly in their bodies, truly present, then that time frame starts to speed up. They don't need 45 minutes.
Mm.
Have a quickie, because their life supports the everyday um, spaciousness that's needed to help them get to that arousal faster. Right. So
So,
it's not like we have to do this once a week. And so we do nothing for the rest of the week. And then on Saturday night, we have 2 hours to speed this all up. That we actually look at how can something happen every day,
mm,
even in
yeah.
small doses, but something needs to happen every day so that come Saturday night, there is kind of like a savings account.
Mm-hmm. So it sounds like, with the analogy of the flower and the nutrients, it sounds like if you are tending the garden every day, then you're more ready to open. You're more in a place of like being already fertilized, already
Yeah,
tended to. And the saying, I heard a great saying, that what did they say, the next orgasm starts right after the first one, or something like that, right? Like,
exactly.
as soon
Yeah.
as you're done, it's like you start priming for the next one, and really like continuing the flirtatiousness or the energy or the communication. Is that kind of what you're saying?
Absolutely. You're continuing the simmer. And another analogy that I love is men are like microwaves, right? You punch
Mm,
time and it goes to the highest setting.
mm-hmm,
Whereas women are like ovens. We need to warm up.
mm-hmm.
And so it is about the warm up, but it's also about, once you're done with the oven, if you want to keep the temperature high, you have to keep it going.
Yeah.
Right. So don't turn it off, because then it takes, again, a long time to ramp up.
Yeah,
So
I love that.
continuing that connection, continuing the simmer, continuing the play, continuing also, there's a big role for us women in this too. So it's not just what we receive from partners, but that we also take time for self-care,
Mm-hmm.
and that we take what I call pleasure pauses throughout the day, that we connect to our bodies or connect to something that gives us pleasure. It doesn't have to be sexual. It can be really enjoying your cup of coffee, not just gulping it down while you're doing something else, but tasting it, or going outside and smelling the roses, literally, to activate your senses, or taking time to really enjoy your shower when you get
Mm-hmm.
home, to get into your body, to have that transition between work and time with your partner.
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm.
Um, those little things also add up. So it's not just what our partners do, but what we do for ourselves.
Right. Like, the selfless versus selfish woman, right? It's like, if we've been conditioned to be selfless, which means we're just depleted all the time and we're running around giving to everybody else. And so how can we be in pleasure or be connected from a place of depletion? So what you're describing is really being selfish, giving yourself what you need, giving yourself that time and space, even if it is just enjoying your coffee or dancing to music or whatever it might be, to just start to feel more connected.
Yeah, absolutely. And, physiologically, it's very difficult for women to get turned on if we're depleted.
Mm-hmm.
Stress for men can actually be a turn on,
Mm,
because the part of the body that is working to deal with stress are the adrenals, and adrenals put out testosterone.
mm-hmm.
So it actually, stress can be an aphrodisiac for men. Like,
Ah,
they
interesting.
can come home with a lot of sexual energy that needs to be released. Whereas for women, the that doesn't work that way. We actually, the testosterone, the extra testosterone that the adrenals emit actually fatigues us and
Mm-hmm.
shuts us down. And so physiologically, if we are doing what we can to get in the mood, quote unquote, we're actually working against the tide,
Right.
and it's going to be very difficult.
It makes me think about the guy coming home from work, you know, the woman's maybe like looking after the kids, getting dinner ready. And I'm thinking of my own my own life, right? And he comes into the kitchen and he grabs your ass, or he's, being like sexual and like groping you, or, making comments. And it's such a turnoff for a woman. It's just like, what am I? Just an object to you? And that dynamic right there, I think, just for me at least, contributed to so much of the breakdown of the sexual relationship, because he just wanted to get in my pants. And that's the last thing I wanted at the end of a long day. So it makes sense what you're talking about. And it can feel very frustrating and confusing for both parties.
Yeah. And again, those are moments when so many women think, well, what's wrong with me?
Mm-hmm.
Why
Yep.
am I not responding? Why am I not having the kind of reaction that he's having, especially in a situation where uh, you really care about each other, you love each other, right? It's like, wow, there's this partner I have, I really love them. Why am I not having the same reaction as he's having?
Yeah. And like you said, you start to feel like you're sexually broken. The conversation becomes about frequency
Yeah.
of sex in with the therapist, and really for me, there was never a way through that. Um, and I'm wondering if you feel like this is a symptom of a larger problem in the relationship, or is it a situation that can be resolved on its own?
Well, it can turn into a much, much deeper problem if unresolved. So that's the first thing. Because what happens is that the confusion turns into frustration, turns into resentment. And in that also is mixed up the initiation rejection cycle, right? He's initiating, he's constantly being rejected by her. And so you have this pattern, which really most couples don't understand why it's happening. They're not familiar with the spontaneous response of
Mhm.
sexual desire models. They don't know how to broach the difference or bridge the difference. And so then all of this starts to spiral. And I have on my website, which something what I call a death spiral, which basically begins with this. It looks like there's a discrepancy in desire, but if it's not attended to, it turns into resentment, it turns into withholding, withdrawing, and eventually contempt,
Yep.
because both partners are so frustrated and so distanced from each other. They the worst they can do is go to contempt, but the part, or the step before that, is just as bad, is also just um feeling so distant from each other, not understanding each other. So that's where it can go when it's unattended.
Mm-hmm.
And how can couples address this is, well, first of all, is understanding that you have two different mechanisms,
Right.
and they're equally valid, equally good, equally beautiful, bring their own set of gifts, and they need to be respected. And so what I do when I work with couples is, first of all, do this kind of education, but then have them get curious about each other. Okay, well, you're not ready in the kitchen when I'm grabbing grabbing your butt. Would you like? What do you need? What would turn you on? So starting to dig that information. And depending where the couple is in this death spiral, if they're just observing this, if this is an acute situation where it's just starting, they have a chance of fixing it if they get the right like
Mhm.
resources. And it could
Mhm.
be a matter of a book or just
Mhm.
kind of hearing this podcast and
Right.
having a mindset change. But as soon as you get caught in the spiral, as the resentment builds in, as you start to withdraw, as the attachment patterns kick in, where one person is withdrawing, another one is chasing the other, you need help. You need
Yeah.
professional help to untangle the sex part from the other stuff, the emotional hurt,
Right.
the childhood attachment patterns, all of that. So
Exactly.
yeah, external help is essential because once you're in it, you can't, right? It's like, what is it? You can't see the forest for the trees.
Yeah. And I've been in the death spiral and it's not fun. And it's
Yeah.
so hard to navigate. I agree. And you end up in contempt or living as roommates and, it sucks. And absolutely get professional help at that point. I love that. I love that explanation of the progression, I guess. And if you can catch it early enough, if you're listening, and I'm guessing maybe you're in a relationship where you're both still having good communication or you're wanting to support each other, then like you said, maybe education, listen to this podcast with your partner and have a conversation. And going back to what you said about communication is a nutrient,
Yep.
talk a little bit more about that.
Yeah. You know, we are, as human beings, completely opaque. You can't see into us.
Yeah.
And so the only way that we can see into each other is through communication, verbal communication, certainly physical communication as well, but there's ambiguity there as well. There's some opaqueness as well, but verbal communication is super important. And so it's how we create that window into us, into
Mhm.
our hearts, into our souls, and into practicalities like what do we like? What turns us off? The alternative from excuse me, the alternative of communicating all of this is assuming and guessing.
Mm.
The problem with that is I've just kind of touched on the tip of the iceberg in terms of the differences between men and women.
Mhm.
And if we are left to our own devices to assume what our partner needs, we will project what we think or what we need, what we think they need.
Yeah.
And so here is a woman, let's say, experiencing sexual desire a certain way, experiencing communication a certain way, and projecting that the man should see this. He should get it. He should meet this.
You
And
should
if
know what I want and what I
he
need.
should know what I want, exactly. And he should be doing the right thing. Right? He knows what to do and he should be doing it.
Right.
And that gets us in trouble. That gets
Mhm.
in trouble because he sees it differently. He has a different body. He has a different set of hormones. He has a different set of communication methods that stem from testosterone versus estrogen.
Mhm.
And even the way our vision works is very different. So again, if we leave it to opaqueness, if we leave it to our own devices, we're going to make the wrong assumptions. We're going to take the wrong actions, and we're going to cause a lot of havoc because
Sure.
we're not going to be able to meet each other's needs.
Yeah. Yeah. That
And
makes a lot of sense.
that misunderstanding causes a lot of people to make really wrongful assumptions. Then, see, we can't meet each other's needs.
Mhm. Or he doesn't care or she doesn't care.
Exactly. He
Yeah.
doesn't care. He doesn't love me. He doesn't. Yeah, he's doing it on purpose. And so,
Mhm.
back to your question about the importance of communication, that communication makes us less opaque. It takes away the guesswork. And then again, it has that connective element of I can see what you're experiencing. I can see what matters to you. I can see what your values are. And, when it comes to the sexual field, it's also, I can see what you're enjoying. Like you're
Mhm.
verbalizing, I love this kind of touch, and oh, I want more of that, or I'm fantasizing about this. It's a window into what's happening on the inside. And
I
that's
love that.
incredibly intimate and arousing and exciting.
Yeah. Yeah. That makes so much sense. So, what if, for women who are listening, what if they're in a situation where their partner isn't open to doing the work? Their partner isn't open to coming to therapy or getting help or reading a book. What can a woman do to get help for herself?
Well, I'm going to start first with this idea that or the mind the I'm going to start with the thinking of like, well, my partner is not open to therapy or reading a book, because that's where we actually get stuck, especially with male partners. But generally, that's true for all people. This isn't actually a question about getting therapy or reading a book. It's about creating a sex life that works for you,
Mhm.
asking your partner to take your needs seriously. Again,
Mm.
not for therapy, not for a book, but what's the actual desire that going to therapy would fulfill or teach you about? So the question is actually about, I would like to connect more to you. I would like to experience more in sex. I would like to reconnect. I would like to learn how to take it slower. I know I don't know how to do that. I know you don't know how to do that. We need help.
Mhm.
I need your help. Are you on board with the goal of, again, reconnecting or learning how to do something? So then turning the conversation into a vulnerable one about you has a way more effect than having a conversation. Should we go see a therapist? How much does a therapist cost? How many times a week? What are they going to do? I can just go read a book, right? It becomes a logical kind of argument versus a vulnerable conversation about, what do I want for me? What do I want for us? And asking a partner, are you on board? Are we a
Mhm.
team here? Could we
Mhm.
do this together? Right?
That's beautiful, and so true. We taking it from the perhaps the you language of like, you're not meeting my needs, so we need to go to therapy, versus some self-disclosure and vulnerability of like, I have needs, or I need this, or I would like to ask you to participate in something. Like it's more of an invitation, it sounds like.
Exactly. It's an invitation. It's a ask for support rather than we should do something, which does not work with anyone. That kind of
Mm-mm.
roping someone in, we should do this,
Mhm.
never works.
Mhm.
But yes, it's a vulnerable ask. And it's an ask also around desire,
Yeah.
which is very, very powerful.
Yeah, for sure. And scarier. But, I think like for the woman to do the work to even find out what that is that she wants and needs, and then to be able to communicate it, like you said, that communication piece, when you know how to articulate that in a way that draws your partner in instead of pushing them away, it sounds like that's a huge piece. Last thing I want to ask you, if for the women who are listening who can really relate to your story, and when you said you felt, I think you said sexually broken, for women who are listening who are in that place where you were, what would you want them to know today?
So, well, first of all, the most important thing is that you're not broken. If you resonate and have experience with things that I shared, and that the key piece is to give yourself permission to be who you are
Mm,
and to get curious about that. If your sexual desire or your desires in general don't match your partner, There's nothing wrong with that. And it's that permission to want what you want. And some of the brokenness too, I didn't get to mentioning that earlier, but some of the brokenness comes from denying our own impulses or urges because they don't look sexual enough. So for example is, at the end of a night, back to that scene where like he's ready to jump in the kitchen and you are tired. One avenue is going to judge yourself, see, I'm not sexual enough. And the other avenue is giving yourself permission to say, I'm really tired. I would love to just cuddle with you. I'm not available for sex, period, or I'm not available for sex yet. But what I would really love is for us to cuddle and for you to touch my face or stroke my back or massage my feet.
Mm.
To give yourself permission to want what you want when you want it and not to override it or think that it's because it's not quote unquote sexual in nature that it's less than, because that's the key to coming back into our fullness in terms of sexuality, is giving ourselves permission to have our journey at our pace,
Mm-hmm.
our terms, not the way we're supposed to.
Wow, I love that so much. The permission to want what we want. And so many of us as women have been told that it's not okay to want what we want. We have to want what other people think we should want. And so we shut down that place that actually connects to what we really want or what is right for us. And that creates so much of the resentment too. And so even just starting there, it sounds like a great place to start is to ask yourself, what do I want in this moment? Or what do I need in this moment? Give yourself permission to make that okay and stop shaming ourselves for it or making ourselves wrong. And then have the courage to ask for it.
Absolutely.
Yeah.
Absolutely. And that in itself is another aphrodisiac, that agency to ask for what we really want and need.
Mm,
It's a turn on. It gives us
mm,
confidence. It makes us feel good. Like, wow, I am honoring myself. I am taking care of myself.
right.
It becomes, again, one of those nutrients for the fertile soil, for our libido to come online in a way, again, that works for us.
Mm, yeah. And coming back to our feminine self and out of that masculine self that women have been conditioned to live in, like you said at the beginning, around productivity and the culture and everything that tells us that we have to be fast paced and have sex like a man and that we have to have this quick libido, and coming back to the feminine, the pleasure, the slowing down, the sensuality, the connection.
Absolutely.
Yeah,
Absolutely.
I love that.
And, it's beneficial for us, but it's also a service to humanity and to the planet because we need more of that. We've been starved of that for many centuries because of necessity, because of wars and famines and living in poverty. But where we are today in the last, since industrialization, the last couple of 100 years, we've been starved of that culturally, and we need that back.
So
Planet
true.
that
And as I
time.
always say, like change ourselves first, and then the world changes. And I just really hear the call for women to do our work around this first. And as you're saying, like to come back to ourselves and realize we're not broken. We just need to reconnect. And then how do we ask for what we need and stand in our power in that way? That is such an empowering message that we need to hear. Thank you so much, Irene, for hanging out with me today and chatting with us about this. This is such a important topic that as women, we need to talk about sex more. We need to be having these conversations more. So I love that you're putting this out into the world. So thanks for being here.
Thank you so much for having me and
Of
for
course.
having such a rich conversation around this topic.
Yeah, I love it. So where can our listeners find you? How can they get into your world?
So my website is rich with blog posts and information, and even a free video series about wanting sex again. And the website is irenefehr.com. And that's where you can find me and get in touch with me. And specifically the series that I mentioned, Wanting Sex or How to Want Sex Again, that's a 3 video series that's packed with information at a level deeper than what I mentioned today, where I actually geek out on women's libido with charts and graphics and stuff
I love it.
uh, to to really drive the point home of the differences, but then also paths forward for
Mhm.
women.
Amazing. So everybody check out Irene's website. I'll put the link in the show notes so you can get over there and take advantage of those programs. And let's all start to love ourselves and love sex and learn how to communicate all the good stuff so we can get what we want, which is we all want great sex, I think, deep down, don't you think?
Yeah, absolutely. We want
Yeah.
that connection.
The
Um,
connection. Yeah.
Sometimes you don't know how to get it, or it can feel intimidating and scary, but it's a, for me, sex is a connection to myself
Mm.
and to my partner and to something deeper, greater
Mhm.
than me. And I find that nourishing, and I hope that women can experience that too. All women.
Totally. Love it. All right. Well, thanks again for being here and all the best. And thanks for listening, everybody. We'll see you next time. Bye.